It's 6:05 p.m.
Okay.
It's obvious that cable TV is here, but I think under the open meeting law, you still have to inform the public that the meeting is being taped.
Okay, so they're now duly informed.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, you don't have any appointments for this evening, although it says 6:10. That's usually just a placeholder. For announcements, I just have a couple. The West Bridgewater Planning Board has posted a notice of a public hearing to be held Wednesday, November 7th in the McDonald Brown Conference Room of Town Hall to discuss a definitive subdivision plan submitted by Miller Engineering on behalf of the owner applicant Kevin and Patricia Parker. The intent of the plan is to create a two-lot subdivision entitled Parker's Way to be located off of 120 East Street and further described on Assessors Map 3456, November 7th at 8 p.m. There's a copy of the proposed plan if anybody would like to see it. Okay. And the planning board has issued a certificate of approval of a definitive plan dated September 5th, 2018, hereby certifying that the planning board of the town of West Bridgewater, Massachusetts, at a duly called and properly posted meeting of said planning board held on September 5th, it was voted to approve a definitive plan entitled Spring Commons, submitted by Jacob Driscoll Engineering, and originally filed with the planning board on May 15th, 2018, concerning the property located at Jack's Way. So this is a subdivision.
Sounds like a 40B or something.
This is off of Spring Street. No, I think it ended up being a 4-lot, maybe a 3-lot subdivision. This is Jack Peters' property.
Yeah. Right down, okay, at the Harvest Warden Spring.
Exactly,
Harvest Warden,
right around the corner from you,
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's also the minutes of a special meeting site visit by the planning board at the farm on Walnut Street. There are a number of issues that have been pending regarding, I believe, sidewalks and curbing and landscaping. Yeah. So planning board did a site visit to review conformity with the planning board's requirements. And there's also the West Bridgewater Planning Board minutes from their September 5th, 2018 meeting, if any.
Is that subdivision out on the farm road there? Is that all done? Or is there more lots of units going in there?
The lots are all developed. Most of the construction is completed, probably with the exception of 3 or 4 houses on what I would call the back side of the subdivision.
There's quite a few in there, that's why I asked. I was up there the other day.
Yeah. But they did have some issues, as I said, with the sidewalks and landscaping.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Chairman. There's also a notice from the planning board. Please be advised that the West Bridgewater Planning Board has agreed to hold a public hearing for definitive subdivision plan on the proposed street acceptance of BC Way, which is off of Manley Street. That's to be held also on November 7th at 8 p.m. in the McDonald Brown Conference Room. And there are also the minutes from the West Bridgewater Planning Board of September 19th, 2018 for the board's review. I think that's it for my announcement. Oh no, there's one other thing, Mr. Chairman and board members. As you know, the Department of Revenue has been reviewing our values for the fiscal year 2019 certification program.
Right. Sure.
I met with a representative of the Department of Revenue on September 24th, along with a representative from Patriot Properties, and we went over all of the information that the Department of Revenue requires to review as part of the recertification process. And since then, I've had several emails and telephone calls, mostly emails, with the Department of Revenue and with Patriot Properties. as follow-up questions to that meeting on the 24th. And as of yesterday, the Department of Revenue representative had submitted her plan and her review to the Boston office for its final review. And based upon that submission, I believe that we will receive preliminary certification of our values within a day or two. I hope within a day or two. I hope at least by Friday we'll get.
And then what, wait for the growth and that stuff?
So the next step would be that we would print the proposed values and have a public disclosure period. Depending on when the Department of Revenue gives us its preliminary certification, I would expect that we could begin the proposed public disclosure maybe next week, maybe Wednesday of next week, the week after at the latest. And so what we would do, the office would print all of the proposed valuations for all real estate and all personal property. I have been in contact with the Board of Selectmen's office, Tracy specifically, and I've asked for her assistance to put a public notification on the town of West Bridgewater's website,
Sure, good idea.
notifying the public that the valuations will be available. And I'm going to also ask for her assistance in posting all of the values online on the town of West Bridgewater's website, either through the Board of Selectmen's website or through the Board of Assessors website.
That's good.
And then we will publicly post those valuations on the counter of the Board of Assessors office and at the library, so that there'll be more access to that data. And of course, the whole purpose of this is to provide total transparency on the valuation and to get input from all of the taxpayers in the town as to questions about the valuations themselves and how we arrived at them, and hopefully to let us know if there's any incorrect data in that database, that we can correct that before we ask the Department of Revenue for final certification of our valuation.
Do they have I was wondering about that. Actually, I was talking about this to somebody the other day. Based on our number of abatement applications, from year to year, it seemed there's a pretty consistent, if for lack of a better word, a lower number that's filed.
Absolutely.
That's going to say something about our job and Patriot's job and the data out there that when you have when you send out X amount of bills and you're receiving 1% or less of abatement applications, not like the old days when it was they were all over the place. It's got to say something about the job, the data, and transparency, anything else related to that. For us, that's obviously the biggest check and balance is a response from the public, regarding their own assessments and such and data.
I agree, Mr.
And there's probably been stuff here to here from year to year, but it's not like when 2.5 first came around, there was you could tell that people didn't understand, question about their data, their values. Now that we're a lot of years into it, it seems like with our town, and I check other towns too because I traveled to other towns, and our number last year, I forget the number, but it was
It's less than 50.
Right, so
it's the lowest it had been
right.
in probably in the 8 years that I've been.
I know it's like the second or third year on a reval process, so that might be that was the case in other years too. That the first year on retool the numbers, you got more response from the public. But I'm just that's going to let somebody know in the DOR, our liaison person or the bureau chief there that on these smaller towns, when you look historically, the number of abatement applications, that's going to be one of the pieces of their pie to say, hey, they're not doing a bad job there.
I think it's also a credit to the town of West Bridgewater Board of Assessors that you have the interim assessment adjustments too, rather than waiting for the 3 years for the revaluation cycle.
It makes
or now the 5
absolutely,
years,
yeah.
which is a change.
Yeah.
Because the taxpayers don't see significant increases or decreases in their assessment.
Right.
And I also think there's a buildup of public trust in the fact that the board is transparent in how they do their business.
And also too, in the old days with that classification split, the meeting upstairs, setting the tax rate, there's been years in past in other communities I've worked in where they've changed the rate, on the CI stuff, dramatically, which causes an increase, not so much in the assessment, but in the tax dollars. So when we say, well, we're concerned with the assessment, not the dollars, but unfortunately, that's what they're concerned with. But now with our selectmen, they're in tune with, keeping the line kind of consistent from year to year. So there's no, 1 year in Brockton, we didn't change the values, and the tax rate went up over $3 a thousand on the CI stuff. So,
Yeah, it makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is all I have to report. I think we've gone over the correspondence folder, which was mostly the planning board information. You have several warrants to sign. Do you have those, Mr. Chandler?
Yeah, pass them over.
Making their way this way. And they are the usual documents to be signed. With one exception, the treasurer collector has made a request that the board abate uncollectible motor vehicle excise taxes, which is a normal routine, but the board doesn't do that on a monthly basis. And just for the board's edification and the public's edification, when the treasurer collector makes a determination that he is unable, after reasonable attempts to collect these motor vehicle excises, it gets to a point where the treasurer collector asks the board to simply abate them as uncollectible. This doesn't have any impact on the overlay account. This is a generally accepted accounting practice. Once the board signs off on that, the treasurer collector will notify the town accountant, and the town accountant will make the appropriate bookkeeping adjustments. I don't have any minutes for presentation to the board for its meeting this evening. So I do have a couple of items that I would like to discuss with the board in executive session regarding applications for abatement under Purpose 7 of the open meeting law. Also regarding pending appellate tax board cases relative to Purposes 3 and 7 of the open meeting law. And I do not have any qualified executive session minutes for the board or for the board's review. So just those first three items that are listed on the agenda, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
it would be appropriate for a board member to make a motion.
Okay.
And second it.
I just have one question. When you were talking about, who is our DOR rep now?
Jennifer Williams.
Thank you.
You are.
We all set?
Somebody needs to make a motion.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
we're all set then with the questions? Okay. I'll make a motion for the board to enter an executive session for purposes of discussing what the principal assessor just listed.
The second is required.
Second?
Yeah. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Member Smith. All those in favor?
Roll call, Mr.
Aye.
Roll call. Assessor Smith?
Yes.
Munker?
Yes.
McCarthy, yes.
Yes, okay.